Welcome to a new day. It's day 5, and today we're going to talk about important data structure in any programming language, and so it is in the world of Java as well, which is called as arrays. Array is a index-based linear data structure. How it is defined in Java, how do we use it? Let's try to see it with the hands-on example in this video. Now let's get started with another data type which is called as an arrays. So before we understand the array, and you can see the diagram here, let's try to understand with the help of an example, right, to better understand things. Let's assume that you want to go and track the temperature of next 30 days, right? My task is to go and track the temperature of next 30 days. Fair enough. Now, one of the options to deal with situation is that for the next 30 days, I go and define 30 different variables. I go and say that int day 1, I go and say that int day 2, I go and say that int day 3, and like this, I go and store for the int day 30, right? So I go and initialize 30 variables. Now, this is possible to do, but don't you think it's like a sheer wastage of time to go and define that many variables? And let's assume that I'm not only going to track for the next 30 days, I want to do the same exercise for the next 6 months, the next 1 year. In that case, how will you end up creating so many variables? So in order to avoid this kind of a situation, typically Java makers or almost every programming language in this earth has given us a way to get a rescue from that. And what is that? The answer to that is an array. So array is basically a data type or a data structure, whatever way that you want like to go and describe it. It is used to hold multiple values of the same type. Arrays in Java is basically a data structure or a data type which helps you go and store multiple values, more than one values of the same data type. For example, if I now go back to my previous screen, let's say this is an array. In Java, if I have to go and define the array, I'll have to go and define what type of data. For every data variable that we go and define, if it is of type array, you have to go and say that array holds which type of the data. That's number one. And number two, that you have to go and tell in the beginning itself that what is the size of the array. You go and define an array, you go and say what is the type, you go and define what is the type and what is the size of the array, how many elements you're going to store. And then in this array, you can go and store that many elements. And each element is being indicated with the help of an index which starts as 0. So for example, I can go and say that 2 is the element which is at the 0th index. 4 is the element which is at the first index. 6 is the element which is at the second index. 8 is the element which is at the third index, and likewise. So as we go and traverse the given array, at each index we go and find an element. So if I go and repeat again, array is a data type or a data structure which can be used to store multiple values together. That's number one. In an array, if you have to go and define in Java, you have to go and define the data type, and you also have to go and define that what is the size of the array. You can go and change it at the runtime. The size is fixed and is decided at the time you initialize the array. And thirdly, the elements in the array are represented or accessed with the help of the index which starts from 0. So if I have an array of size, let's say that 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 8, this is an array. And let's say the size of this array is 6. So the index value will start from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So the last index will be always equals to size minus 1, and the first index will always be 0. This is how we work with the arrays. In the case of the arrays, if I talk about the index, the last index is always size minus 1 and the first index is always 0. Fair? Now let's get hands on and let's try to go to the code and try to see that how the array could be defined. So let me go and open my Eclipse. And in the Eclipse, let me go and define another file called as, let me go and call it as arrays example. Fair enough. Now since I need to have the public static void main, let me go and type it myself, public static void main, and I go and write the string args. Fair enough. Now if I have to go and define array, I told you I have to go and define the type. So I have to go and say that int. This is how you go and define that this is the type, and then I go and call it as arr, and then I go and say the new int, and then I have to go and define the size 5. Let's try to understand this, what I have written, and then we'll move further. In this case, if you see here, let me open my scribble. This is the type. Okay, the type is of the integer type. This is the array. This is the name of the variable. You see here, this new keyword is being used. This is the new keyword, is used to initialize a new array. And when I initialize a new array, again I have to go and say that what is the initial size. So as soon as I go and execute this line, what could have happened is that it would have created an array of the size 5. And now since no value has been added here, all the default values that it should look like is 0, 0, 0, 0 and 0. This is how it would look like. Let's try to print this and see what it will print to us. So if I go and do right now, sys out and print here array. Let me save this file and run this file as Java application. If you see here, what I get here is some gibberish value. I'm not able to identify what it is. Now what is that? We'll try to understand sometime later. But keep this in mind. When I go and define array like this right now, it is acting more of like an object. See, in the world of Java, there are two types of variables. One is called as, or two types of data rather, right? Variable is not the right term in the world of the Java. Two types of variables. One is called as a primitive. So all those int, char, sort, long, boolean, char, all of those were primitives. And then there are non-primitives. These non-primitives are native, which is already present in the Java. For example, array is an example of a non-primitive. It's acting more of like an object. String is an example of non-primitive. And something which is user defined. As we make progress in the course, we talk about the objects, classes, all these things will be more clear. But as of now, you can think that array, which you see here, its data type is non-primitive. And that's how when I go and print array, I see some hash value here. I don't get the exact value which is inside the array. But if I want to go and see what are the values of the array, how do I do it? I do it with the help of the index, right? I know that once I would have done this, this would have created an array that looks something like this with the default values. And each of its values could be accessed by the index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's say that I want to go and access the element at the second index. I can simply go and say that array, find me the element at the second index. If I go and run this, right, it is printing 0. It was but obvious. So as soon as I go and provide the valid values, let's say that, if I go and provide another valid value called as 4 and try to save this, run it, I'll get the value as 0 itself. But the value of the index that I go and provide, it has to be in the range of 0 to 4 itself. The value of index, right, the value of the index that I'm providing here, it has to be in the range of 0 to 1. If I go either to the left of this or to the right of it, it will throw me an error. Let's try to see that. So here, if I come back and I go and say that sys out, and I say that array, and I go and put -1, and I try to run this file, it has given me the error. If you see here in the down, it is saying that index outer bound exception. Please keep this in mind. 30% of all the bugs which happens in the production in the companies are because you have breached the index time and again. This array index outer bound of exception, maybe you would have seen for the first time here, but this is going to be a very common exception. And in the coming classes, when we go and talk about the exception handling and other stuff, this thing will be repeated. So the point to note here is that you can go and access the elements of the array based on the index, but you have to ensure that those indexes are in the proper range. It has to start from 0, and the maximum value that it can take is that it has to be 1 less than the size of the given array. It has to be 1 less than the size of the given array. Now we'll move further, but one handy way of knowing the size of a array is that if I want to go and know the size of the array, what I can do is that I can go and say that array dot, and I can go and say that length. So array dot length is a field. As I said, that array is an object. Array dot length is a field which gets you the size of the array. Now how it is coming, what is that, how it is working, just hold on. As we make progress, we'll understand that, but just keep a note here. When I go and do this, it will help me get the size of the array. So if I go and run this, let me comment this out so that it doesn't go beyond the friends. If I run this, I go and say just 5. So far we have understood how we have defined the array. We have to define the array size, type, how we can go and access the elements. Now how do I go and set the elements? We can set the element the same way. So I know that this array is of the size 5. I can go and say that array at 0th position, you go and set the value as 2. I go and set the array at first position, you go and set the value as 13. You go and set that array as 12 as second position, you go and set the value 3. You go and set the array at the third index, you go and set the value 5. You go and set that array at the fourth index, you go and set the value 11. Like this, you go and set the value of 0 till the fourth index. And now if I again want to go and print this, and I say that array, tell me the value at the first index, right? If I go and run this, the value is coming as 13. If you see here at the first index, we set the value as 13. And again, when I am getting the value, I am now printing the value as 13 itself. Great. Awesome. Now you tell me one thing, and it's a very logical question. I have this array here defined. Now assume, let me go and comment all these print statements so that it doesn't look buggy. I have this array like this. Let's say that I go further and say that array equals to new int, and I go and say that 7. Fair? And here I am printing the array 1, and then again let me go and print the array 1. Now I am printing this array 1 twice. I am printing it here once and I am printing it here twice. Can you guys tell me what will be the outcome of these two values? Will it remain the same or will it get changed? If I go and run this, let's try to run this. If I go and run this, sir, I see that initial value of the array is coming as 13. That's as expected. But why the next one is coming as 0? Because when I go and do this, this array has been, so initially the array was pointing to this array whose value was 2, 13, 3, 5, 11. So when I go and execute this line of the code, I got the element at the first index and 13 got printed. But then again, when I move to the next line where I'm saying array equals to new int 7, now this array, instead of pointing to this, has started pointing to this new array whose default values are there. Right? Since it is of size 7, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And since I'm looking for the element at the first index, this value is 0, so it is printing 0 itself. Fair enough? Am I clear till this point? So we have understood array can hold multiple elements, how we go and define the array, and how we can go retrieve and set the values in the array itself. Now in this case what we have done is that we have defined an array and then later on we have initialized. And now let's try to create another array of the different data types. So let me go and define something called as a string, and I go and say that words equals to new string, right? And here I go and say that Vishwa Mohan Rakesh. So this is another way of initializing a array. As you can see here, few things remain the same, which is the data type. This is the name of the variable, and I go and see this. And instead of saying the size and starting the initializing the array with the default values, I go and set the initial value itself. So here in this case, I can go and say that I have declared and defined the same time. I have done both the things. I have declared also and I have defined also. Both the things has been done here in the right now. Fair enough. So with this we have defined the arrays. Few additional things that I would like to note. Let's say that if I go and define int and I go and say the array 1 equals to new int 5, the position of this array could be changed left right. So for example, if I write this is fine. I can also write it like this, int array this, and it will not give me any error. If I want, if I go and write something like this is, sorry, remove this. If I go into this, it does not allow, right? So I can only use this symbol after this, or needed I can do it after the variable. But the convention is that, let's not get confused, we should always make use of this convention to do it. And also if I have defined an array of the type integer, in this case if I try to go and put array at 0 element and let me go and try to store something called as Vishwa, this will not be allowed. Why it is not allowed? Because I know that, sir, this array is of the type integer, and in this I am trying to just fix Vishwa, which is not correct. Fair enough. So we got started with the array. We'll talk about arrays in detail. We'll solve a lot of problems when we go and start the data structures and algorithm. But few key points that I want you people to be aware of when we go and talk about the arrays going ahead. And those key points are: 1. Array is used to store multiple values of same type. That's number 1 point in Java that you need to understand. Number 2, whenever array stores any data, it always stores in the contiguous memory. Whenever we go and store any data, it always store in the contiguous memory. What means that when you go and define an array like this, int array new int 5, let's assume that you go and define it like this. In the memory, let's say this is my memory space. Inside the memory it will go and store something like this. Some contiguous 5 memory will be allocated for it, right? So it goes and store data in the contiguous memory. The third part is that the array elements are always accessed. You know, the elements are accessed using index. So you can always go and access the elements using the index in the case of the arrays. So these are the key pointers. When we move to the data structures and algorithm, we'll talk more around that. And for now, I think we are good about this array data type. So now we have come to the end of this video. We saw very diligently that how arrays are defined in Java and how typically you can go and access it. If you like the video, please put that into the comments, because your small support, your everything that you go and write help me get motivated and bring my best in bringing every content for you people on this community.